Joseph's College. Welcome to Real Men Graduate National Signing Day. We're streaming live across the country and around the world from Emmanuel Baptist Church in Brooklyn, New York. Real Men Graduate started as a campaign to increase the percentage of black males who complete a four-year degree. Today's event celebrates those who are taking the first step toward that goal by committing to enroll in college this year. You can join this celebration from wherever you are by posting with the hashtag #RMGSigningDay. Today's speakers each took different paths to a college degree, but they all prove how far a college education can take you. But before we hear from them, here's a special message from First Lady Michelle Obama.
Hello, everybody. I want to congratulate each and every one of you for making it to this day. This celebration is for all those years of hard work, for all those late nights and tough classes, for all those obstacles that you overcame. You did it. You made it. And I am so incredibly proud of you. This is a big deal, but of course, it's not the end of your journey. In many ways, it's just the beginning, because getting into college isn't the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to graduate and live the life of your dreams. So now's the time to start preparing for your freshman year. It's time to start thinking about what major you might choose, what kind of internship you might want to do, how you'll pay off your student loans. And it's okay if you don't know all the answers right away. I know that I certainly didn't back when I was your age. Neither of my parents went to college, and when I got to campus, at first I was totally overwhelmed. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know how to pick my classes. I didn't even bring the right size sheets for my bed. But step by step, I developed a plan. I went to the Student Multicultural Center and I started meeting people. I reached out to an advisor who answered my questions, and I studied as hard as I could to get the grades I wanted. And soon enough, I realized that I had everything I needed to handle college. And I know that the same is true for all of you. You have all the courage, all the intelligence, all the passion and energy that you need to reach higher and complete your education. And I cannot wait to see everything that you will achieve in the years ahead. Congratulations again, and good luck.
Thank you, Mrs. Obama. This is a celebration that we want everyone watching to participate in. So, as I mentioned before, please use the hashtag #RMGSigningDay to tweet or post to Facebook or Instagram, and we'll share the best comments and pictures on our event tweet wall. You can also participate in the panel segments on your computer, through your phone, or through Twitter. So let's give that a try with our first poll question. Where did President Obama earn his undergraduate degree? To answer this question, go to www.pollev.com/RMGSigningDay or text 22333 to RMGSigningDay, then text your response, or you can tweet your response to @LearningGateway. The poll is now open. correct answer is Columbia. Both President and Mrs. Obama earned their undergraduate degrees from Ivy League institutions. And that was to be the inspiration for our first program segment. Unfortunately, our guest speaker for that segment is unable to join us. The good news is that both of our next speakers can provide advice on that topic. Corey Smith earned a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Columbia University, and Patrick Riley is a proud graduate of the nation's only all-male, historically black institution, Morehouse College. So now, without further delay, please welcome our first panel of the afternoon, Black Men Can, a different look at sports and entertainment careers after college. This panel will be moderated by Raymond Johnson, and if time permits, we'll open the segment to questions from the audience through our polling site.
Good afternoon, and thank you for that great introduction. So I'm here with Corey Smith and Patrick Riley. So my first question to you guys are, where did you attend college, and what was your undergraduate major or majors?
So I went to Columbia University. I have a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the Engineering School at Columbia.
And I am a Morehouse man, class of '92, Bachelor of Arts in Broadcast Journalism. And my minor was psychology.
Great. So I want you guys to think back to your freshman year, right? And is your current career what you thought you would be doing when you were a freshman?
Absolutely not. I don't even think I knew that what I do now existed back then. So my title, so I work for Major League Baseball. I guess you should probably start there. And my title is Senior Director of Supplier Diversity and Strategic Sourcing. No one knows what that is. I certainly didn't as a freshman in college. So, you know, it's funny how life puts you where you should be. But at 18 years old, when you think you know it all, you have no clue.
And for me, it's exactly, but not exactly. I always knew I wanted to be in the business of show business. I am a child of pop culture. You know, growing up in the 70s, I'd look at the Donahue Show. Do you guys know the Donahue Show? There was a Donahue Show before there was an Oprah Show. Do you know what I mean? And so there was a Today Show with Bryant Gumbel before there was a Today Show with Tamron Hall. Do you know what I mean? So as a kid, I just knew that I wanted to be in the business. I wanted to cover the business. I wanted to talk about what the stars and the newsmakers were talking about. And so by the time I got to Morehouse, I knew I wanted to do that. How I was gonna do that, I wasn't sure. I was inspired on some level by the fact that Spike Lee did School Days, which is a wonderful film in the late 80s or in the early 90s that captured the essence of what a historically black college is or was. I knew there was a show, the Cosby Show spinoff called A Different World, that showed this landscape of a historically black college with all these students who were super smart and super intelligent and doing great things towards their individual goals. And I wanted to do that. And so that's why I went to Morehouse, to figure out what that was.
So let's continue with you. So how did your time in college, specifically at Morehouse, prepare you for what you're doing now?
Well, I'll tell you, Morehouse did everything for me because it really provided, not just through its curriculum, an opportunity for me to learn more about African Americans in excellence. So any question I may have had that the media may have shared with me that may have showed black people in a different light, Morehouse was there to remind me that the origins of civilization is us. You know, it was there to remind me that some of the most enterprising inventions are our own. You know, that White House, as white as it is in DC, was built by black people. And so Morehouse gave me that lesson in a way that I had not gotten before I attended Morehouse, because I was an Air Force brat. So I kind of was used to navigating in the world as the only black guy or one of a couple black guys, you know, born in Japan. We lived in Germany, California, all over in this kind of military existence. But Morehouse kind of helped me to see that what I was looking at in the mirror was amazing, and it stands on amazing shoulders. And I just wanted to continue, not even just from the historical perspective. You know, Martin Luther King, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is a graduate of Morehouse College. So I had this historical context, but then I had a contemporary context by which I was inspired. So I was meeting mentors week one at Morehouse. Bill Nunn. Do you guys know Bill Nunn from Sister Act? You remember Sister Act? Radio Raheem from Do the Right Thing. I met him week one, and they said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to cover TV and entertainment. He became a mentor of mine at Morehouse week one. We're still in touch to this day. And so Morehouse did everything for me to be able to navigate through mentors and programming how to figure out this thing called a career.
Fantastic. So same question for you, Corey. So how did your college experience prepare you for what you're doing today, especially since it sounds like it's very different?
You know, for me, at the end of the day, college teaches you how to think. It provides you with the thought process to come up with a solution. Yeah, I went to Columbia, prestigious Ivy League school. You know, all the accolades that come with the Ivy League are there. On paper, my resume looks super impressive just when people see the words Columbia next to the word university. But the reality is it's a college experience like any other, meaning you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And college is a weird time in anybody's life, right? Because you're at that age when you're really trying to figure out yourself. So you've already got these crazy and kooky thoughts going through your head about who you are, who you want to be, and that self-identity can either be strengthened or you can get lost in college. You know, my freshman year, I just came from 12 years of Catholic school, and something as simple as not having to wear a uniform anymore. I like lost my mind in my fashion sense. I went nuts freshman year. I would leave the house, leave my dorm in pajamas just because I could, right? So you go through this self-awareness at that point in time, and the ability to decipher and figure things out, not just in the classroom, because again, it teaches you how to think, but in your identity and your branding and your personal brand and what that looks like to the outside world. You know, for me, Columbia presented it's a microcosm of not just this city, but of the world, right? Because I spent a significant time walking around that campus, presenting myself in a certain way, such that people didn't even believe I went to the school. They thought I was just a kid from Harlem. Because Columbia says it's in Morningside Heights, but anybody knows that anything north of 110th Street is Harlem. So something that simple as that differentiator that, you know, I had engineering books in my backpack, but people probably thought I had something else in my backpack, is a thought process in and of itself for you to have to identify with or not and figure out in this prestigious institution. The fact that I was in the engineering school and not some other type of major where kids that looked like me were predominantly, I was the only black male to graduate from the mechanical engineering program 4 years later. That was it. It was me. That looked like me. That was it. There were a few of us that started. I was the only one that finished. And that in and of itself is a thought process, because that can screw with your head too, you know? So for me, it was just, look, I need to figure this thing out, and I need to get through it, and it teaches you how to do that. You can learn a lot of stuff in books, but it's really how you apply it to life that makes the difference. And for me, my college experience really taught me how to apply my thinking.
Great. So what I want you guys to think about now, can you give me kind of a pinch myself moment, something that you experienced in your career that you never thought you'd be experiencing? Kind of like that, wow, I'm actually doing this.
Well, I'll tell you, before I could even leave Morehouse, I was pinching myself because it was such an environment and the mentors were such nurturers. By my senior year at Morehouse College, I was chosen as a spokesperson because a part of what I wanted to do was not just produce TV, but I wanted to be on camera too. But you know, it wasn't all about the shine for me, but I learned it all. And in learning it all, by my senior year, I was a spokesperson for the Morehouse College Glee Club on a CBS network special, Kennedy Center Honors, as the Morehouse College Glee Club is honoring the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra chorus orchestra composer and conductor, Robert Shaw. And it just happened to time out my senior year, and it happened to time out that the executive producer chose me to speak on behalf of Morehouse on this network special. That's before Christmas. By February, we have this thing called a Candle in the Dark Award, where we honor African American men in excellence. It was the year they were honoring Louis Gossett Jr. I was selected to present him his award. Louis Gossett Jr. is an Emmy and Oscar award-winning actor of major note. He's just been seen in the critically acclaimed Book of Negroes, the miniseries that ran on BET just a couple of months ago. So I was pinching myself because I'd made a decision to go to college, because I made the decision to go to Morehouse College. I got to pinch myself before I graduated, but the way I pinch myself now, looking back 20 years since I graduated.
How long?
20 years. I graduated in 92, 20 plus. The opportunity to work alongside Oprah Winfrey. She is a recurring client. I've worked for her show. I have had the opportunity to be the sole interviewer of her Legends when she threw a big Legends ball in 2005 honoring every great African-American woman on the planet. I thanked her at the end of the opportunity because I'm glad her legends were my legends. I didn't have to go searching to interview anybody else because they were all there that night, including President Obama and the First Lady. So I've had a lot of moments the likes of that because I stayed the course, and Morehouse helped me, much like Columbia helped Corey here, to finish that first thing. That first thing for me was college. You can show yourself how you can finish something in 4 years, 5 years, give or take. It was four for me. And what it sets is a confidence note for your future, because that's what it did for me. Now, it meant that I could do anything, that I started in 1988 and that I finished in 92, meant that I could do that again and again and again, whether it is trying to get a job, whether it's trying to apply for graduate school or law school. It's just a great adult start for any of us to be able to know that you can do anything. And so from whatever that senior year pinch myself moment was to now, it's really because I did it the first time that let me know that I could continue to do it and be rewarded for it.
Fantastic. Corey, what was that moment for you?
I've had several. So before maybe I should tell you guys what I do. Like I said it before, but nobody still knows what I do. So my role is to impact MLB's cost, spend. Everybody gets the idea of profit and loss, right? So a company makes money, that's your revenue, and then you spend money because you need to sustain your business. The amount of money you make minus the amount of money you spend is your net profit. That's what you're left with. That's how much you are worth. It's like your own bank account. If you make $1 million in a year, but you spend $999,000 of it, you're still broke, right? So my job is to control the spend. How do I do that? The companies that we buy stuff from, and stuff could be anything. It could be the pens and papers that we use in the office. It could be hiring a construction company to renovate a baseball stadium for us. It could be anything, just stuff, goods and services. The companies that we buy stuff from, my job is to make sure that some of those companies are diverse owned by minorities, African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, Indians, owned by women, owned by veterans. You come home from the war, you start your own company. My job is to make sure that, thank you for serving our country, let's help you out. Small businesses, just getting started, right? So I have an overall responsibility of saying, look, I need to be mindful of how much money MLB spends, period. But then I also need to make sure that some of that is being circulated into the right communities. That's my job. With that said,
It got to be a tweetable answer because they're gonna cut us off at a second.
right. With that said, my pinch me moment probably is the first time I made my first millionaire. So, an African American company provided IT services, and to give a black man a check for $1 million, you can't beat that. You cannot beat that.
If you want to relive that, our senior pastor is sitting right here. I'm sure he'll gladly take that. So I want to thank our panelists, Corey, Patrick. Thank you guys for coming out and being with us. And I'm going to turn it back to our host. Thank you very much.
Which of these hip-hop artists has earned a 4-year degree? Again, you can answer online at our polling website, pollev.com/RMG Signing Day, or text 22333 to RMG Signing Day, then text your choice, or you can tweet your answer to @LearningGateway. The correct answer is all 4. All 4 of these artists have earned 4-year degrees, and to find out which schools they graduated from and what they majored in, stay tuned to the end of today's program. Again, if you're following along on social media, please use the hashtag RMG Signing Day. Our next guests are longtime public servants of the city of New York. Chief Jeff Madry has served as a member of the NYPD for more than 20 years. On February 13th, he became the commanding officer of Brooklyn North, one of the most active commands in New York City. We are also pleased to welcome Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams to this panel discussion. Prior to being elected as Borough President, he served as a New York State Senator, and prior to that, he too served the city as a member of the NYPD. This panel will be moderated by Dr. Candace Best, founder and CEO of Learning Gateway, the sponsor of this Real Men Graduate event. Our polling site has reopened for questions, so please welcome Chief Madry and Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams.
You can clap, it's okay. So the name of this panel actually was called False Starts, and the reason why I was so thrilled to have you both here is because I know you have a lot in common, the two of you. Actually, the three of us grew up in Queens, although I don't think we knew each other. But I also understand that the two of you, let's say, had a very colorful past. So what I want to do is start off with having you talk about your teen years. I know Jeff a little bit better. I can call you Jeff, right? Even though you've got all that brass on you.
Yes, ma'am.
I remember one of the first stories you told me was that you were one of 4 boys, and that of the 4, the one that your mother worried most about was?
Me.
Okay.
Me.
Why?
Yeah. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Best, and to my co-panelists here, Borough President Eric Adams. Like you said, Candace, I grew up in Queens. I went to Andrew Jackson High School. I was number 2 out of 4 boys, and I was attracted to the streets. I was hanging out. I wasn't really focused in school. I wasn't looking forward towards the college experience because I really would just wanted to hang out instead of concentrating in school. Thank God for my mother. She kept me grounded. She kept me focused. When I did graduate high school, she basically dragged me by the ear to enroll in one of the local colleges, and from there, I started to get a little bit more focused. Not quite 100%. I stopped after a couple of semesters to become a police officer. And once I got into the police department, after a few years, and I realized I wanted to go further and I wanted to advance in the police department, couldn't do it without a college degree. You needed 2 years of college to make the first
Well, we're going to come back to college, but I'm not going to let you off that easy about what your youth was like, because you kind of glanced past some of the trouble you got into. But before we come back to that, Borough President, your story from your early years, would you say you worried your mother more or less than you think Jeff worried his?
Well, I think that Jeff's comments really fit the same. I was the second of 4 boys also. And I don't know if it's so much attractive to the streets as, you know, in certain communities, some of the behavior and activity that you would do. It's just part of when you had well-groomed baseball fields in certain parts of Queens. In our part of Queens, you didn't have that. And so our fund was doing what one would consider to be juvenile delinquent behavior. And where in other parts of, as I learned when I got in policing, if you did some of those things, they would take you home to your mother. If we did in the South Jamaica, Queens, they would take you to the 103rd Precinct. So there was a different treatment that continues even till today. And so we were doing what we would consider having fun. I remember one thing that happened on Guy R. Brewer Boulevard. There was a shooting when we were children. And the next day, a group of my friends, we all went to the bar where the shooting took place, and we opened the door and we threw firecrackers in there, and so everybody thought it was shooting again. We ran and laughed. We thought we were just having fun. So it wasn't as though we were trying to be hurtful, but there were no alternatives. Those things that were in the street was all we had. That was our extracurriculum activity. And so I was arrested at 15 for criminal trespass, my brother and I. And it was a learning experience for me, because my mother, who was very quick with the belt, this time she didn't take out the belt. She just, she placed her hands on my shoulders, looked me straight in my eye, tried to lower my head. She raised my head up and she said, "Son, you're better than this." And that stayed with me throughout my entire life, that she just said, "You're better than this."
Now, Jeff, you mentioned also that your mom was part of what kind of got you on the straight and narrow. But before you get to that, I remember you telling me a story about the fact that one of your early role models before you got your head on straight was a drug dealer in the neighborhood.
Yes. It was a guy who lived on my block, and, he was very popular in the neighborhood, and he always had the money and the cars and the flash, and it was attractive at that age, 14, 15 years old. I thought, oh yeah, this is the way to go. I could have a nice car, I could have this, I could have that. Thank God he was better than me, because he wouldn't even let me get involved in that. He would say, "This is not for you, you're better than this." So he actually, wouldn't even let me get involved in that. Not that I really wanted to, but I really just was attracted to it. And as I got a little older, towards the end of high school years and stuff, when I say I was in the streets, it was really about finding the next party to go to and, hanging out with girls and doing things like that. I wasn't really into like criminal behavior, but I was always into, hey, can I party tonight? Can I do this? I don't want to go to class. I just want to go hang out instead, just have fun.
And that criminal piece, a night of going to a party and coming home safely, or going and becoming arrested, it happens so fast in our community. You could just be out hanging out with your friends, and one of them could be carrying a gun. Everybody goes if you're in the car. One of them could be carrying drugs. Instead of him holding on himself, he'll throw it under the seat of the car. Everybody goes. It happens so quickly. And, as Jeff was stating, there were days that, we were just going out, socializing, or just going out to a party, and you just at the wrong place at the wrong time. And those quick encounters are just life-changing. And so many people that that I grew up with, and I'm sure Jeff and I can say the same. A lot of folks that we grew up with just never made it. And really, the only reason he's standing here with 2 stars on his shoulders and my captain and borough president is because we ran faster than the cops. We would know better. It was just that we ran faster. And I think that, when we look at a lot of our young people and some of the mishaps they're going through, we have to, if you do a close analysis and examination, our children are not bad children. They're not bad children. We have to give them the opportunities that they could become a chief of a department or borough president. I was a solid D student in school, but a whole lot of A students can't call themselves borough president.
That is true. That is true. And, he's calling me doctor, but, one of the things I like to tell people is that even though I have a lot of degrees, I also, in college, was a C student. I was not an A student. So it's never too late for you to make that turnaround. So let's talk about the turning points, because obviously, when you were running faster than the police, at some point you ran into a turning point that put you on the path that brought you here. So what were the turning points for you?
For me, the turning point was when I was in high school, and one of my good friends in high school, I was noticing he was coming to school, real clean, every week new clothes and stuff. And I was like, wait, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? Where are you getting all these new clothes from? He said, I got a job at McDonald's. And I was like, that's it? And he was like, yeah, I got a job at McDonald's. And it was right before my 16th birthday. And I said, you know what? I want a job too. And I wound up finding a job at a restaurant that's not even in existence in New York anymore. And I was a busboy at the restaurant. And I just met a whole new group of friends who were they were very positive friends. We'd go to work on Fridays and Saturdays. And we'd still hang out. We'd still find that party, but it was after work. And once I had the job, my mother was like, if you want a job, you have to do better in school. You have to become more focused. And that was the turning point for me, just finding a job where I'd made a little money, met a new group of friends, and it was just a positive, totally different vibe with those friends. We were they were a lot more positive, and we had a lot of good fun, but it was all balanced and based around working, doing better in school, and then having a good time.
Definitely being arrested. My close friend Henry Black, Henry was just a straight up troublemaker, and I would just always be at the wrong spot with Henry. And we got arrested together with my younger brother, who should not have been arrested. He was just hanging out with Henry and I. And, when my mother said, hey, Eric, you're better than this, that's just really impacted me, because my mother was, as Jeff was saying, my mother was just a pillar of strength, 3rd grade education, was able to, take us out of a rat-infested tenement in Brooklyn and move to a house in Queens. And, just the life that she provided for us, I just really felt as though, I put her in that situation where she had to come to the 103rd precinct and the cops laughing at her clothing and, just the way they treated her. I put her in that position. And I made a commitment, I told her I would never do that again. And I remember when I got promoted captain in the police department and sitting down looking at her, and she saw me go from breaking the law to enforcing the law and then going to Albany to write the law. I was just paying her back for what she has done for me and my 5 brothers and sisters. But that was my turning point.
All right, so we have to talk about law enforcement and black males, but before we do that, I just want to make sure we talk a little bit about the role that education played in this transition that you made.
Well, for me, when I initially went to college, I stopped because I wanted to go into the police department. So I went into the police department. After about 2 or 3 years, I wanted to advance in the police department and pass promotional tests. But in order to gain promotions, you need college credits, at least 60 college credits to become a sergeant. Now you need 60 college credits to go into the police department. When back when I came on and when the borough president came on, you didn't need a college education. So I went back to college. I was working full-time. I was going to school part-time. And it was a better experience for me because I knew I wanted to advance in the police department, so I was more focused with my education. I was a straight A student the second go-around, not the first time. the second go round, and also when I was paying for it versus my parents paying for it, that was a wake-up call too, when I had to spend my money every 6 months, every semester. And once I went to school local. I went to John Jay College. It's a law enforcement school, a premier law enforcement school in the country. And I was able to network with other police officers, former police officers. A lot of the professors were former police officers, former high-ranking officers, and they served as mentors. A lot of times I was able to talk to them about some of my experiences on my day-to-day, when I was walking the beat out there on a day-to-day, and they was able to provide some of their experiences, which made me a better police officer, learn how to handle myself better, learn how to deal with the public and the community better. So going to John Jay while I was a police officer, having something to actually tie my education to, real experience to tie my education to, really helped me.
Same. I went from, graduating from Bates High School, taking remedial courses, going to New York City College of Technology, getting my associates, then John Jay for my bachelor's, and then Marist College for my master's. I went from that solid D student to a solid A student. When I stopped trying to be slick and started to be astute, the game just changed, and then education was no longer a requirement. I was finding something through education, and I realized the power of education. And so I was addicted to reading new books, finding new places to go, and just really experience the entire intellectual part of life. And so education is not about just sitting there and getting a degree that you can hang on your wall, because that's just a training. Education is when you experience life. How do you take that degree and explore life? I would sit down in New York City College of Technology and meet children from Vietnam, and then I would travel over the summer to Vietnam and go visit their country, or go to Greece, or go to Lebanon because I met someone from Lebanese. So it's about matching what you read in the books to what you're going to live your life like. And I think that education was an amazing transformation for me. It made me just a better human being, and I began to like myself because of what I was learning in education. And it's difficult for our young people who are in Central Brooklyn, but 70% of them are not reading or writing at math level. You can't like yourself if you're not receiving some form of educational accomplishment to explore yourself, and that's why it's a big fight. Educating our children is more than so they can get a good job. It's so they can have a good qualitative perspective of themselves.
So, I cannot let you all go without having this conversation about the relationship between black males and law enforcement, because, I don't think there's anyone now who needs to be reminded of what's going on. So I want to get your perspective, but particularly because you're in the unique position of both having been in law enforcement, but you're also black males. So when you hear that the majority of black males don't trust the police, what does that, bring to your mind, and, what is your response to that?
Well, when I hear about that perspective that black males don't trust the police, I really don't have an issue with that. Most people, when you meet someone, you don't trust them until you get to know them. And I have to really look at these young men over here. You don't have to trust me because I'm a police officer. What I would ask you to do is just respect me the same way I'm supposed to respect you. And as we get to talk and we get to learn about each other, or maybe I have an opportunity to help you, or you might have an opportunity to help me, then we'll start establishing trust. Then we'll start building trust that way.
But if they're feeling that you're not respecting them, and by you I mean if the belief is, well, the police don't respect us, what's the response to that? What do you say to a black male who says, I don't have to be respectful to the police because they don't respect us? That's what's being tweeted. So what do you say to that?
Right. My response to that is you always treat people how you want to be treated. So you may feel that the police don't respect you. You may feel any particular person or particular group don't respect you. You still show respect first. You always show respect first. Because a lot of times when you show respect first, then you're gonna gain that respect right back. I'm probably old enough to be your fathers, but I would still come to you and say, young man, sir, I would always approach you with respect because I want to immediately get your respect back. And I understand that as a police officer. So my role is to come and initiate and be a leader and show you that respect so you can give it back to me. That's what you have to do out there too, with your classmates, with your teachers, with students who are younger than you, with police officers, with borough presidents. You always show that respect first, because when you show it first, you'll get it back. And if you don't get it back, then you understand what you're dealing with, and you could be, you know, still respectful, but understand I might have to take a step back and handle this situation differently. But always show respect first. As the borough commander, I tell my police officers to respect the community. As your borough commander, I tell you the same thing, respect your police officers. And that's where it's going to start, by everybody looking at themselves, pointing the finger at themselves, and showing respect and giving respect.
Now, Borough President, you sort of stand in the middle between the community and law enforcement. So what do you see as necessary to rebuild the relationship that the black community has with law enforcement?
I think it's a combination of things, and I'm big on this term called emotional intelligence, and it's coming from where Chief Madry is coming from. And it's not taught anywhere. We do not teach emotional intelligence in our school, and really we did not teach it in our law enforcement agencies. Until now, we are starting the process of teaching emotional intelligence. How do you respond in the heat of the moment? How do you treat people? And how do you expect people to treat you? And so we can't just look at the police department in addressing this problem. It's not a comfortable conversation that when you're taking a human being who has a perception of you based on what you see on TV or reading a newspaper, or if you're in a vehicle doing patrol and you hear only negative things all the time about a community, that officer is going to have a negative impression of that community. So the ideal situation for me is that I don't want a police officer on my block. Let me handle my own block. If I'm doing my job as a man and making sure that there's no drugs being sold on my corner, making sure that nobody is carrying guns on my corner, making sure that the women of my community to get home safe, I don't even have to worry about the police. But if I'm living in a community where I'm walking past people slinging drugs, I'm getting gunshots every day. We were just talking about shooting in 7-9. 2 people shot last night. If I live in the cesspool of violence and I'm silent about it, those who don't know me is going to perceive me as though you're not deserving of anything. I always talk about the story, this rookie cop, when I was a lieutenant. He came into Ingersoll Housing, and there was urine in the elevator. And he said, you see, all these people deserve nothing. I said, listen, man, one person pissed in the elevator. Everybody in this building is upset about that. And so when you have police departments that police communities based on the numerical minority that are committing criminal actions, that's a bad recipe. And that's what I spoke with the mayor about. Our police officers can no longer just stand on the corner and watch people walk by. We have to be engaging. We have to say good morning. We have to say hello. We have to talk about, we have a municipal ID program taking place in the city. Hey, are you aware of this municipal ID? If the only time you meet someone is if they're telling you, you can't stand here, I'm giving you a summons, or you're in the middle of a fight, you're going to have a negative perception of them. We have to be proactive about how do we engage. I walk by police officers sometimes and I say good morning. They look scared. It's all right to say good morning. Just as it's all right for a police officer to say good morning to you, it's all right for the public to say good morning to that police officer. We have to build the synergy. I want cops in my community. I want to live in a safe community. I don't want to live in a community that any and everything goes. I want police officers there. I want them to be respectful, and I'm going to be respectful to them. I want to be emotionally intelligent to them, and I want them to be emotionally intelligent to me.
So we have some young men here, probably tired of being talked at. So what I'd like to do is just give you guys, and the two of you gentlemen, in the time we have left, what advice would you give to the young men here, to the young men that are watching, about how to take charge of their futures so that they're not victims, but that they're victors in the choices that they make in life?
Dr. Best, I think your form right here is a great start for them, you know. Education, real men graduate. How do you make yourself better? You have to think about this every day. When I was in the police department, I already had my 4-year degree. I wanted more, and I went back to graduate school almost 8 years after I already had my 4-year degree, because I wanted to be better. You should always have a plan for your life. You should always have a plan for self-improvement, just to think, how can I become better? What do I want to do? How am I going to follow my dreams? And how am I going to make everything a reality? These are the things that you have to think about all the time. I went into the police department at a very young age. I mean, I was 20 years old when I went into the police department. I didn't realize the opportunities that I would have in the police department, and I went pretty high up as far as the hierarchy and the rank structure is concerned. And you know, I'm proud. I'm proud of myself. I'm happy with what I achieved, and it was because I wanted more for myself, and I kept studying, passing tests. There's a lot of opportunities in the police department. You look at our borough president right here, who went to the police department, who is a senator, and our current borough president. There's a lot of opportunities here, but it's not about the police department. It's about you, your education, and your choices. You just have to think on them, pray on them every day, and constantly build yourself, find a way to self-improve, and you'll get whatever you want in life.
Borough President, we're just about out of time, but I want to give you the final word on that.
No, and I think that very well said by Chief Madry, and he's not pretty high up, he is high up. You know, to be the commanding officer of Brooklyn North says a lot. Brooklyn, the largest borough with 2.6 million people. It's perseverance. There are good days, there are bad days. You know, there are days that I wish I didn't get out of bed, and there are days that I wish I got out of bed. You know, it's about just really perseverance. None of this is just instant and smooth. It's a lot of dedication, a lot of commitments, what you have to do to get at these levels. You already have it inside you in a very natural way, and it's about bringing all those things together. A degree doesn't make a man makes a degree. A job doesn't make a man makes the job. Being borough president is not going to make me if I don't come with the character that it needs to be, who I ought to be the borough president in this capacity, in this time. And you're in the right place. The mere fact that you're here is saying I want to listen, and I want to learn, and I want to move forward. I wish I would have spent time at a place like this when I was growing up. I would be the mayor already and don't have to wait 7 years, you know. But just stay committed, be dedicated, and be true to yourself. Be bold, be unafraid, be true, be you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Before we introduce our next speaker, it's time for a college roll call. If you're a college student or a college graduate watching this event, go to polev.com/RMG Signing Day or text 22333 to RMG Signing Day and shout out your college. You can also tweet your shout out with the hashtag RMG Signing Day. I'm a college student, so I'm going to do that right now, actually. Going to tweet that to hashtag St. Joseph's College.
He has a great night.
There we go. One of the best things about college is the opportunity it offers to build community. And according to our next speaker, when black males become active in their college communities, not only do they get more out of their time in college, they're also more likely to graduate. Please welcome Jermaine Wright, Interim University Director for the Black Male Initiative at the City University of New York.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Dr. Best for inviting me here to be a part of this monumentous occasion. I'm going to take a step back a bit and just tell a bit about myself before I go into the CUNY Black Male Initiative program. I grew up in the Bronx, off of the Grand Concourse and 183rd Street. Not one of the best areas to grow up in, but needless to say, through mentors, through tutoring, through support, I was able to make it out of that current circumstance, make it to Binghamton University, thereafter go to John Jay College, where I received a master's in public administration, and I'm currently finishing up a PhD at Rutgers Newark. So some of those supportive services that I'm going to talk about that the CUNY BMI Black Male Initiative offers were some of the things that I was exposed to that made me somewhat of the success that I am today. So CUNY BMI began about a decade ago. We're celebrating a decade this year. And it was born out of the auspice of realizing that men of color in particular were overrepresented in the criminal justice system and underrepresented in higher education. So with that being the case, CUNY BMI's then Chancellor, Matthew Goldstein, put together a task force to come up with solutions and recommendations on how to pretty much address the plight of black males in higher education. So when we began in 2005, we began with 15 demonstration projects throughout the 5 boroughs. CUNY itself is comprised of 24 institutions throughout the 5 boroughs. There are 11 senior colleges and 7 community colleges. It ranges from associate's degrees, certificates, all the way up to PhD that you could receive at the City University of New York. So suffice to say, it's a very comprehensive and involved system. So being one of the largest urban public institutions, there are a lot of men of color, particularly at the City University of New York. So this was the best place to actually have a program of this magnitude so that we could address the needs of men of color. So I assumed the role of university director about 8 months ago, and I've been with CUNY for about 7 years now. And it's been a labor of love in that I love what I do, helping men of color succeed. I see myself in them and realizing that someone took the time to mold me, to tutor me, to mentor me, and to give me the supports and services that I need. So I feel that this program is a way of me giving back, and I also get paid for it. So it's a win-win on my part. So BMI has 3 main components that I think leads to its success. We have a diversity recruitment component, which means that our 32 BMI sites are adamantly and aggressively going out there and reaching out to men of color, whether they see them in the classroom, whether they see them in the hallways. They have particular events that may be of interest to men of color in particular, and men of color come to these programs, and it's pretty much the carrot and the hook that gets them bought in, that says that if you are serious about academic success, if you want to be successful, you'll join this program. Our primary funder for the BMI program is the City Council. We do receive funding from a public entity, so while we do bear the name Black Male Initiative, this program is open and available to all academically inclined students. However, it is a primary concentration of black men and Latino males that take part in the program. So we do a lot of diversity recruitment. The second facet of BMI, which I think is one of the prominent and most important pieces, is structured mentorship. What we found through research and just anecdotally, that mentorship is a crucial and vital part to one's success and community building. So we have a peer mentorship model where we have high achieving students, sometimes upperclassmen, who are going to pretty much mentor and tutor low achieving students, but also incoming freshmen, helping them navigate through the ins and the outs, knowing what classes to take, what not to take, and also just helping them with the day-to-day rigors of being men of color at an institution and creating this sense of belonging and community, which is important. We've asked our students time and time again what has kept them coming back more and more, and it's more so because of the community and the family and the network that we've started that has had them coming back when they felt as if they wanted to leave, when they felt they wanted to give up. They knew that someone cared about them and said, you know what, we won't let you go. So it's that sense of community and belonging that has been instrumental in making our students successful. And then the last component is academic enhancement and programming, because by all means it is a higher ed institution, so without being academically successful and getting those high marks, we won't be able to get our students out when they need to be with 120 credits and above a 2.0. So we're very astute about connecting our young men of color, our students generally, with tutoring opportunities, with learning libraries, with things that will make them academically successful throughout. So I think those 3 components is what makes BMI the success that it is. So in closing, I wanted to read a brief excerpt from a student that I think somewhat says it better than I can say. So he states, young black youth today, young black youth in this day and age need all the support that they can get. I was lucky to have the type of father that I have. However, most black youth have no support system and have to look to others to show them support. We come from broken homes, impoverished communities, and pass through a school system that poorly educates us. To a lot of black males at BMCC, BMI is the only support that they have. They get academic support, more importantly, a place to just be themselves and tackle their problems head on. BMI has impacted both my academic and social life. Academically, on a general level, BMI has given me the support needed and put me in the right place to be around the right people. Socially, on the other level, BMI takes the platform of a safe zone of thought. We are free to think and talk however we like without worry of being persecuted. Moreover, BMI provides its members with opportunities to work either through or directly with BMI. And the student closes by saying that because of the interventions of BMI, he currently has a 4.0 GPA, plans to do a double major in physics and mathematics when he gets to a four-year institution, and he also plans to jump straight to the PhD in physics program once he completes the undergraduate degree. And it was through the assistance of BMI that he went ahead and applied for the BMCC NYU Poise program, which he has been accepted to. To some of the program, he is one of 10 BMCC students competing for 5 scholarships to NYU. The winners will be announced towards the end of this school year. So in closing, this is what BMI has done for its students, and you've heard directly from a student how BMI has impacted him. Thank you.
Thank you, Jermaine. To set the stage for our next guest, we have another poll question for you. This time, we want to know whether you believe the following statement is true or false. There are more black men in college than in prison. Again, you can answer online at pollev.com/RMG Signing Day. Text 22333 to RMG Signing Day, then text true or false, or you can tweet your response to @LearningGateway. This statement is true. As of 2013, there were more than 1.4 million black men in college, but only just over half of that number were incarcerated in federal, state, and local systems combined. More importantly, for most of those in prison, a college education is still possible, and if they make that choice, it will be a turning point in their lives. Our next guests know this to be true from firsthand experience, and they've agreed to share their experiences with us today. Please welcome Ray Tebu, Johnny Perez, and Ishmael Cedeno. This segment will be moderated by Fred Patrick, Director of the Center on Sentencing and Corrections at the Vera Institute of Justice.
Well, good afternoon. First, I'd like to recognize and thank Dr. Best for acknowledging that success is often not a straight line. There are often pitfalls, questionable decisions, challenges, but the beauty of this panel is it's about finding hope and possibility and transformation in spite of setbacks. So Johnny, why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about the young Johnny in terms of your preteen and teen years and the role that education played.
So as a youngster, I didn't really appreciate education as much as I do now as an adult. You know, I was grew up in the Bronx, grew up in the South Bronx, seducted by the streets. Yeah, seducted by the street life. You know, I grew up in a single parent household, oldest out of 4. You know, we moved to New York when I was about 10 years old, and it felt almost as immediately I fell right into the street life. You know, very seductive, the flashy cars, the jury, you know, I guess the money in a lot of cases. It was real hard to combat it or to fight against it when my mother couldn't afford the Jordan, she couldn't afford the fresh clothes. Sometimes we didn't have a whole lot to eat, and then I get offered these opportunities to say, well, if you want to sell drugs, make some money or whatever the case may be, and then you get into a situation where you're making like $200, $300, $400 a day, and it's difficult to step away from that. You go to school, and school wasn't just rewarding, not only because of the people that it found like it was more fun outside of school than in. But also too, a lot of the teachers were not engaged either. You know, basically they had it almost, I had it in their mind as if this is what it's going to be. You're never going to become anything. So why should I try, so to speak? When I was 21 years old, due to the succession of my crimes, I was arrested and convicted for a robbery in the first degree. I got sentenced to 15 years. I did 13 years out of that, and I've been released now for about a year and a half. I mean, we can talk about later, but I discovered education in prison, actually, you know, and out of the concrete kind of grew a role, so to speak.
Same question, Ishmael. Your young days and the role that education played.
So I grew up on the east side in Manhattan in the projects, East River projects off the FDR Drive. And I was engaged with a lot of, you know, street life activity. You know, I had another brother who he was engaged in street life activity. He ended up becoming a gang member. I sold some drugs for a little while, and I got involved with the wrong crowd, and things were going really crazy for me at that time as a young kid. And my parents thought that maybe sending me away to live with my grandparents was gonna give me a better opportunity to, you know, get an education and not get into trouble. And it really didn't work. They sent me to Florida. I went to Florida. I started doing school. I went to high school, got a high school diploma. You know, I started attending Palm Beach Atlantic University, and in my freshman year, I started doing what I was doing here in New York. You know, basically running the streets, staying out late at night, not listening to my grandparents, getting involved with the wrong crowd, a crowd that I shouldn't have been engaged with. And eventually, my nightlife caught up with my daytime life, and I had to find out the hard way that you can't be a straight A student and do the right thing during the day, but then want to engage in criminal activity at night. So I ended up getting sentenced to 6 years of prison time in the state of Florida. So it was really difficult during my prison sentence because, you know, 6 years was a very long time. I had to figure out what it was that I wanted to do, how I was going to maintain my sanity. So I started reading a lot of books, started doing a lot of studying in there, utilizing the law library, trying to keep myself from getting involved in other, you know, criminal activities within prison. And things started to work out. I started to realize that, hey, you know, when I get out, I need to get an education. I need to pursue, you know, this knowledge, because when you look at what's going on outside in the community, you know, there's a lot of young black men and young Latino men engaging in criminal activity and being in the street, and they're not engaging in educational settings and utilizing educational resources.
Ray, same question. Your young days and the role of education in that regard.
So for me, education was never a question. It was never a question of whether I was going to go to college. It was just when I was going to stop getting myself into nonsense that kept me from finishing it. So both my parents were well educated, and they emphasized the importance of education. I was homeschooled. My father was sort of a hippie, and he moved us out to the woods and the suburbs and kept us busy with all kinds of outdoor activities. And he taught us how to survive. I knew how to dig a trench and hide from, you know, social services by the age of 9. And fast forward, you know, he also had a drug addiction. So when my mother died, his drug addiction took off. He moved us to New York City, and here I was, this nerdy little suburban kid living in the middle of the Bronx. And during a time when it was pretty rough, and I did what I always do. I adapted, and I figured it out. So, you know, I went from getting punched in the face and bullied in the video game room to defending myself. And once I learned that I could defend myself, then I also learned there were ways to make money that weren't working. You know, I had a job. Probably had a job since the age of 12, but, you know, I was a little black kid living in Little Italy in the Bronx, and it was hard to get a job. So I didn't start hustling to make a bunch of money and to get rich and to wear fancy clothes. You know, my father didn't put money in the house. So, you know, he paid the rent, and everything else was pretty much on me. So I found ways to bring food and clothes in for my brother and sister and make sure they could get to school. And I went to school pretty much up until the 11th grade. And then some things happened, and I decided I was going to commit myself to the streets full time. Fast forward, I got shot. I wound up in the group home system, and I got back into college. I went to John Jay for a whole semester, and I realized, you know, one of the blessings of having educated parents who had the time and the energy to dedicate to educating me was that I went in to high school more advanced than the average student in my class. Problem was that I got really lazy, and thought I could just sit around and listen to the teacher and take the test and pass. And I did really well in high school up until I dropped out and got my GED. And then when I went to college, I realized you can't do that. You actually have to work. And I was lost. I was not very good in math, and I was sitting in remedial math and taking advanced science classes. It just didn't work. I got myself arrested for robbing a police officer on the subway. It's a long story that I won't bore you with, but it was pretty dramatic, and it got me 4 to 12 years in prison. While I was in prison, I was this little skinny kid, and people tried to bully me, and I did what I do best. I adapted. I figured it out. I figured out how to keep myself safe. That got me in more and more trouble. One of the things I always say is I was smart enough to get myself into a whole bunch of trouble, but not usually smart enough to get myself out of it. And while I was in prison, I went back to college. I got to go to college for 2 semesters, then they canceled the college programs. With not much to do, I managed to get myself in a whole bunch of other stuff, which it took me time to dig my way out of. And then I was released. I didn't go back to college right away. I had to get a job and maintain myself and establish myself in society. And then the first 6 months I was home, I went to cooking school because I worked in a restaurant. And it wasn't academically challenging, but it taught me something. It taught me that I could sit in a classroom for a year and finish something. A few years later, I got into the social services field, and I went back to college. I went back to John Jay, and I was just determined I was going to finish it. And that's what I did. So in 2012, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in economics and psychology.
Thank you, Ray. So, Johnny, what led you to the college path?
So, the funny thing, sometimes I think you can do the right thing for the wrong reasons, still get the right results. And what I mean by that is that here's this college program at the facility where I was at, which was Mount McGregor Correctional Facility, towards the end of my sentence. And I said, if I take this program, I can make my first parole board. Let me get into this program, take it, go show these people, look, I'm doing everything that I can, and they'll let me out. But so as a result of that, I got all of the benefits that comes with education. It was so mind-blowing and eye-opening. It was like an epiphany when you're sitting there. I was sitting in my first college class, which was a macroeconomics class, and I'm learning about capitalism and my role in society, so on and so forth. And then I realized how much I didn't know. And I think education is like that, where the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. And then knowing that you don't know, that in turn fuels your motivation to learn more. But before that, I fell into sort of, I guess, informal education through, I spent a lot of time in solitary confinement, and there's not a lot to read, so I ended up reading War and Peace by accident because there was nothing else to read. You get books and chapters are missing. But that formal education, and it was empowering. Suddenly you find opportunities where before you saw challenges, or you see stepping stones where before you saw nothing but barriers, and your mind opens up and says, wait a minute, I am more than a criminal or whatever they say that I am. My mother did not give birth to me to spend my days locked in a human cage, and maybe education is the way out of this whole thing,
Ishmael, what about you? How did you come to see college as an option?
So when I was released from prison, I came back to New York City, and I started looking for a job. I needed a job in the worst way. I was short on money. So I lost my focus on wanting to be involved in an educational setting because I wanted to pursue a job. I ended up meeting a man by the name of Glenn Martin, who used to be the vice president of Fortune Society. He's now the founder of Just Leadership USA. And he started to mentor me and talk me through and tell me, you know what, you can get a job, but you really need to finish your education. You're cutting yourself short in life if you don't pursue your education. And I put up a fight. I was like, I just want a job, and I don't really want to pursue my education right now. And as he kept talking to me and mentoring me, he gave me a young black man's name, which is Ray Taboo. And he said, you need to see this guy Ray. He works for the College Initiative. He really specializes in helping young minority men get into college. Just go have a talk with him. So I gave Ray a call, and I had a meeting with Ray, And ever since then, it was all she wrote. I've been taking 4 classes a semester. I've been focusing on school. I do work full-time as well. I attend Lehman College, pursuing a bachelor's in political science. I plan on going to pursue my MPA. I'm looking into Princeton University and NYU, and everything is going swell right now. Sometimes I do get tired. You have a full-time job and full-time school, but I have to remember I had enough rest when I was in prison for 6 years. Now it's time to start doing for self and doing for others that need help and that are in the same predicament I was in years ago.
Ray, different question. What do you say to the critics who argue that incarcerated individuals should not be able to take college courses while in prison?
Well, the argument is usually that we make smarter criminals. That's not true. You make smarter individuals who make better decisions. You know, one of the things I learned is that typically when you live in a low-income community, everything is about right this minute. I need to take care of bills right now. I need to, you know, get things done now. I need to handle this situation immediately. And most of us don't get a chance when we're in that constant day-to-day hustle and grind to think about the future. And, you know, one of the arguments I hear from young men who I talk to about going to college is, well, I don't need a college degree to make money. Well, that's true. You don't need a college degree to succeed either. I can tell you, statistically speaking, though, the lifetime earnings of someone with a college degree versus someone without is $1 million difference. How many people here thought about lifetime earnings before? How many people thought about what you're going to make over your entire life? 1 person, 2 people. We don't think about that. I didn't think about that until I started helping people get into college, and I read it, and I was like, oh, but we don't get trained to think about things like how return on investment and long-term money and skills and information. I mean, what college and prison does is it reduces the number of people that go back to prison. It increases the number of people who are able to get employment shortly after being released from prison, and it helps you catch up with the $170,000 loss of income that most people suffer when they're in prison. So, I mean, what I would say is if you're telling me that people who are in prison shouldn't go to college, then you're telling me that we should keep perpetuating cycles of violence and economic poverty on people who are already starting out at an economic disadvantage.
15 seconds each for the young man in the audience here live or in the virtual audience who sees their story in your story but doesn't think college is for him. What do you say? 15 seconds, right?
How can you leave $1 million laying on the table? College is not hard. It's really about working consistently to complete something. It's not hard. They'll teach you. Don't have to come in with tons of academic skills. You have to be ready to work and be ready to finish something.
Ishmael.
If you think about your future, you really need an education. Things are changing as days progress. Economically, things aren't getting better. You have to realize that you are a minority individual and the odds are stacked against you in society. And going to college was not difficult if you set your mind to it. I thought college was difficult in the beginning, but once I started to set my mind to it and dedicate time into my studies and practicing my mathematical arithmetic and going to tutoring, everything started to get better.
Johnny, 10 seconds.
I would say that you are stronger than what you think you are. There is no one like you, and there has never been anyone like you, and there will never be anyone like you. And that's important because that means that you are unique, you're truly unique. Take advantage of your time here. And it's so, I can't do it in 10 seconds, but you are stronger than what you think that you are, regardless of what anyone or any environment tells you what it is, tells you about yourself.
Let's thank our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. We're almost at the end of today's event, but before we close, we want to hear from the men this day was created for. You are the class of 2019. This is your college roll call. Where will you be going to college this fall? Tweet or post to Facebook or Instagram with a shout out to the school you'll be attending, and be sure to use the hashtag RMG Signing Day. Now, to bring us our closing remarks, please welcome back to the stage Dr. Candice Best, founder and CEO of Learning Gateway, sponsor of Real Men Graduate and Real Men Graduate National Signing Day.
Thank you. Before I give my remarks, can we just give a shout out to David, who is an example of what a college degree can do. He is class of 2015 in 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks. He helps us get to that goal of 60% because he gets his degree. So thank you, David, for being here. Learning Gateway's Real Men Graduate Initiative has one big, bold goal. 60% of black males will have a 4-year degree by the year 2020. And while we created Real Men Graduate National Signing Day to celebrate the men who are taking steps to make that goal a reality, one of the questions that I received on too many occasions as we were planning this event is, why black males? So I've decided to answer that question through the work of Dr. Jennifer Eberhardt. She is a social psychologist out of Stanford University who earned her doctorate in psychology from Harvard. She is also a MacArthur Genius Fellow. What I'm about to share with you was taken from a presentation she gave in 2007 at Harvard Law School. She was presenting the results of research she and her colleagues conducted on the subconscious associations people make between blacks and crime and the associations they make between blacks and animals. She began her presentation not with her own research, but with the results of other studies that underscore why her research is necessary. The fact that most white Americans think racial discrimination against blacks is no longer a problem, that blacks have equal access and opportunity for employment, education, and housing, that blacks are treated fairly, and that as white Americans, they themselves never experience negative thoughts or emotions when they encounter people of different races. So Dr. Eberhardt and her team's work focuses on what are called implicit associations about race. Because in her words, our attitudes and beliefs about race can be processed implicitly. Race can influence people more than they think, meaning that in circumstances where we don't even know we're thinking about race, we could be thinking about race. And at times, these attitudes and beliefs about race can lead to negative consequences. So here's some of what she and her team found. In tests where white males were exposed to images at speeds that placed what they saw beneath their conscious awareness, those who were primed to think about black faces focused more quickly on objects associated with crime, like guns, than those who were presented with white faces. These associations also worked in reverse. That is, when primed to think about crime, research subjects focused their attention more quickly on black faces. It's important to note that, as is common with psychological research, the initial research participants were white male college students, in this case, students attending an Ivy League institution. These are the males who will run the companies we seek employment from, the banks that will determine whether our small businesses receive the loans they need to operate. They will own the properties we seek to live in, become the legislators who make our laws and the judges who determine the fairness of proceedings against us. They are also more likely to be the police commissioner than the police officer. So Dr. Eberhardt and her colleagues studied police officers as well. And when these officers were encouraged to think about arresting, shooting, or capturing, they too were drawn more quickly to the black face. You can't see that, but it says, "You look like the sketch of someone who is thinking about committing a crime." In fact, it turns out that the very blackness of a face matters. These researchers found that the more stereotypically black a male appears, the more likely he is to be falsely identified in a lineup. And if convicted of a crime that carries the possibility of a death sentence, the more likely he is to receive it. So let's talk about stereotypes. To be specific, looking stereotypically black doubles the chances of receiving a death sentence, but only if the victims are white. So if all lives matter, they don't matter equally. And Dr. Eberhardt's research also tells us why. Black people are not just viewed as criminals. We are thought of as less than human. This isn't hyperbole, it's history. And at one time in this country, it was the law. So what starts as a rule becomes a reason. One of the oldest race battles that blacks have fought in this country has been the battle to be recognized as fully human, to be regarded not in the in-between status somewhere between ape and human, but to be fully human. And this is an old battle that on the surface at least appears to be largely forgotten. when Dr. Eberhardt and her team asked Stanford University undergraduates to tell them what social groups it associated with AIDS, most reported no knowledge that Black Americans are associated with apes. When asked what animals are associated with Black Americans, again most reported no knowledge of an association between Blacks and apes. No research study could be found documenting an explicit or implicit stereotypical association between Blacks and apes. So Dr. Eberhardt and her team created one, and I don't think I need to tell you what they found. Speaking about this experience, she said, "These results stopped me in my tracks. For the first time in my career, I looked at a study's results, and I just had to say, have mercy. We kept running this study. We repeated it to make sure the effect was real, and the result was always the same. We tested the association backwards and forwards, and the result was always the same." Now, that may seem funny, but let me make this connection for you. Because we aren't talking about political correctness. If you ask any forensic psychologist, they will tell you that once we begin to see a person as less than human, that person becomes easier to kill. These associations between Blacks and animals have seeped deep into our subconscious awareness in large measure because of how they have been introduced and then reinforced over generations through every form of media, music, art, journalism. In one of the studies the Eberhardt team conducted, they reviewed the newspaper articles written between 1979 and 1999 about defendants who were convicted of crimes that made them eligible for the death penalty. And in these articles, they looked for words like animal, barbaric, predator, and savage. They wanted to know if animal imagery was used more frequently in articles about Black defendants than in articles about white defendants who were convicted of equally heinous crimes, and that's exactly what they found. But they also found this imagery to be predictive, meaning the defendants who were most frequently described as animals were also the ones most frequently sentenced to death. These images are everywhere, and none of us are immune. Because while Black men are more likely to be subjected to police brutality than any other demographic, they are also at their highest risk of violent death at the hands of another Black man. It's going to take more than a hashtag for Black lives to matter. This is why this day was necessary. Before our lives can matter to anyone else, they have to matter to us. That means our choices have to matter. Nothing we face as a people in 2015 is harder or more dangerous than what we faced in 1815, because we have choices that our grandparents did not. We get to choose how we spend our time, how we choose to present ourselves, how we choose to voice our frustrations, and what we choose to call each other. Every choice we make is an image, and whether we agree with it or not, if that image does not destroy a stereotype to the subconscious mind, it defends it. So this day is for every Black male, no matter who you are or where you've come from. This is your day because you matter to us. We are expecting great things from you because despite all images to the contrary, you come from greatness. We are not here to celebrate that you are going to college. We are here to celebrate that you are going to graduate. And rest assured, you belong to a village that stands ready to help you. A stereotype doesn't have to be your story. You get to write your own. So as we bring this year's event to a close and these moments become your memories, I invite you to start writing the next chapter of your story today. As you do, let these words from the late Ossie Davis frame the images that you see and what you see being Black to be. Tonight, my friends, I find in being Black a thing of beauty, a joy, a strength, a secret cup of gladness. A native land in neither time nor place, a native land in every Negro face. Be loyal to yourself, your skin, your hair, your lips, your Southern speech and your laughing kindness are Negro kingdoms vast as any other. Accept in full the sweetness of your Blackness, not wishing to be white, nor red, nor yellow, or any other race or face, but this.